Hello, and welcome to another episode of It's a History Podcast. I am your host, Madison, and as some of you know, in my non-podcasting life, I work in retail management. This time of year is usually crazy busy in the retail world, with Black Friday being the magnum opus of nearly every retailer's year. Every year, Black Friday weekend is referred to as the main event in the retailer space. You start planning in September, freight starts to increase week over week to prepare for the fateful weekend, and we start hiring at a surplus for the holiday season. But when did shopping the day after Thanksgiving become such a cultural phenomenon? In my recent episode on the history of federal holidays, I mentioned that going so far back as the early 20th century, the time between Thanksgiving and Christmas was always a busy shopping season, with FDR even attempting to move up Thanksgiving a week earlier to promote a more lengthy shopping season to infuse more money into the economy. Black Friday, as we know it today, did not occur until the 1980s when retailers who wanted to take back the term after an event in the 1960s, which we'll talk about later in today's episode, created the story of Black Friday being the day that businesses who ran in the red for the majority of the year finally made a profit and were officially in the black. The term Black Friday has been around for much longer than the 1980s though, so let's take a look at the first instance of the term being used. To do so, we need to go back to 1869 and the crash of the U.S. gold market on September 24th. In 1869, Ulysses S. Grant was president and his popularity was starting to wane. Just 4 years after the end of the Civil War, Grant was trying to improve the U.S. economy by reducing the supply of paper dollars. His administration bought back paper dollars at a discount and replaced their paper dollars with a new currency that was backed by gold. Well, at the same time that this was happening, two men, Jay Gould and Jim Fisk, were scheming to make a huge profit. They planned to buy up as much gold stock as they could, inflating the price, and by the time they would eventually sell, the price of gold would be high enough to obtain a huge profit. But with Grant's money exchange plan with the citizens of the United States, Gould and Fisk's plan would not work. The next part of their plan was to recruit a man named Abel Corbin, who just so happened to be married to Grant's sister Virginia. Through the proximity of Corbin, Gould and Fisk were able to get quite close to Grant, and every time they got together, the subject of government money policy would come up. After one too many of these conversations, Grant started to become suspicious. And after the discovery of a letter between his sister and his wife discussing the scheme, he knew he was being played. He immediately sent word to Gould that he should stop his plan and also ordered the sale of $4 million in government gold. While this is happening, Gould and Fisk, starting in September 20th, 1869, started buying up as much gold as they could, with the price increasing just as they thought it would. The gold reached its highest price per ounce on September 24th, but the massive influx in available gold after Grant's sale, the market started to panic. Within minutes of the gold hitting the market, the price per ounce plummeted and investors, many of whom purchased their gold with money obtained with loans, started to sell off what they had. This collapse in the U.S. gold market originated the term Black Friday, but there was still at least one more day that held the name Black Friday prior to our current retail-dominated mantra. You may be familiar with the fairly prominent Army versus Navy college football game, and in the 1950s, this football game was hosted in Philadelphia the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Now, with the popularity of the game, the city would see an influx of people and an increase of shoppers in the day between the holiday and the big game. There was such an increase of people in the city that the Philadelphia police force had to work the whole day just to manage the crowds. Eventually, the day after Thanksgiving was dubbed Black Friday because it was the day that no one wanted to work. There is also some evidence that the term Black Friday, still in reference to the day after Thanksgiving, referred not to the massive crowds, but instead to the phenomenon of many employees skipping out on work on the Friday between Thanksgiving and the weekend, prior to the time in which many office-type jobs just had the day off. By the time the 1980s rolled around, retailers started to use the term in the way we typically associate with Black Friday, being in reference to the company's finances. There was a brief attempt to try to rebrand the day as Big Friday, but the name Black Friday was stuck. And this inability to change the name from Black Friday to Big Friday is where the being in the black story comes from. And ever since, we have associated Black Friday with the official start of the holiday shopping season. The 1990s and the 2000s were when retailers started to fine-tune their Black Friday strategies, with earlier opening hours, doorbuster deals, or time-specific sales started to become the norm for Black Friday. Up until 2002, the Saturday before Christmas was historically the busiest shopping day of the year, but Black Friday soon took over as the leading sales day. These 2 days seemingly battle it out every year for who will hold the title of busiest shopping day of the year. I do think that this is highly dependent on where in the week Christmas falls. There has also been a phenomenon known as Black Friday creep in the past 5 years or so, where instead of the deals just being held on a single day, Black Friday sales now start as early as the weekend before the holiday, and Black Friday marketing is used throughout the year. As someone who has performed many ad sets, seeing the difference in price, I have maybe a handful of times seen something go on sale for a lower price than it had been on sale throughout the year. Nearly every Black Friday ad set I set was a sale set that I had already seen in the previous year. And since we're here, I'd like to include an anecdote of perhaps the strangest Black Friday I ever worked, which was the Black Friday in 2020. In efforts to decrease the amount of foot traffic in stores, but also preserve the Black Friday sales, retailers like Joann's really pushed online ordering and curbside pickup, which was all fine and dandy, but Best Buy, our neighboring store, also promoted this very same concept. With Best Buy being the more popular Black Friday shopping destination as tech and games are more common Christmas presents than craft supplies. With that in mind, this led to a forever long line of cars lined up in front of the storefronts waiting for curbside pickup, like the worst kind of drive-thru you can imagine. The parking lot was an accident waiting to happen, and though this was in an effort to reduce foot traffic, I cannot say that there was a discernible lessening of foot traffic into our store that day. After some phone calls with the store manager of the Best Buy next door and some traffic redirecting, we were able to divert the line of cars away from the main walking path of shoppers and also remove them from the fire lane. A close second would be the first year after we installed a new register system that after opening the registers early for a 6 a.m. open, all the registers decided to close themselves again at 7 a.m. Now that involves some very frantic phone calls to upper management. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new about Black Friday. Are you planning on Black Friday shopping this year? Sources for today's episode include an article from PBS titled Black Friday, September 24th, 1869, and an article from History.com titled What's the Real History of Black Friday, written by Sarah Pruitt. If you liked what you heard today, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions, comments, or topic ideas, you can email me at itsahistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads. I'm pretty active on both. Thank you again for listening to this week's episode, and I hope to have you in the next one.